Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we would kindly ask if everyone would please turn off or silence all electronic devices. Thank you.
Baruch haba b'shem Adonai, welcome everyone. Eshet Chayil Mimsa, a woman of valor who can find, for her worth is far greater than rubies. The heart of her husband is safely trust in her, and through her he has no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works willingly with her hands. She's like the merchant ships, she brings her food from afar. She rises also while it is yet night and gives food to her household and a portion to her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. She girds her loins with strength and makes strong her arms. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the law of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and eats not the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women have done valiantly, he says, but you exceed them all. I chose to begin our time together today in memory of Lydia Kuznetsov with a reading of Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor. This is a song that gets sung each Friday evening at the Shabbat table in celebration of a strong Jewish woman. And today, as we're brought together in loving memory of Lydia, we remember her as just such a woman. Now, I didn't know her in life, only coming into contact with the family a few days ago upon her passing. But I spent some time in preparation for our time together today with her loving husband of almost 50 years and her life partner, Sergei, and her children, Artem and Katya, who shared with me about the woman that Lydia was. And I call her a strong Jewish woman from Eshet Chayil as I learned about her strength, the strength that it took for her to leave Russia with her 2 children, a box of books for Sergei, and only 1 suitcase, coming to America to begin life anew. I learned about her love of walking, of travel, of music, of entertaining, of swimming, and so much more. I learned about the strength and intelligence it took for her to become a programmer, a top analyst for her company, helping to establish her family here in America. Her strength as she confronted breast cancer, always primarily concerned with the well-being of her children, her granddaughter Zoe, and her husband. Katya told me when I met with the family that as graceful as her mother was in life, she was all the more so in illness and death. And Eshet Chayil says at the end, her children rise up and call her blessed, and her husband also. And it's clear to me, and it was clear to me in meeting with the family, the deep love and affection shared in this family. In listening to their story, I was moved by this love and affection, but it seemed to me at least to go a bit beyond the love shared in any healthy family unit. There was a deep respect for Lydia, the woman that she was, the way she lived her life, the values she held, and how she cared for her family. In difficult times such as these, and as a rabbi, I see many of them. That respect is a blessing. In loss, we discussed yesterday how our best and worst qualities can be amplified, and when the qualities are so good, blessing can flow. But that blessing that she shared in life and in her passing doesn't end with death, because in the Jewish tradition, we teach that the physical body is temporary, but the soul, that's eternal. So while today we gather for sacred purpose, we gather to pray for full and complete rest for Lydia's body, we focus on the fact that her soul, even in death, remains bound to the bond of life, to each of you, and we seek blessings for the continued elevation of her soul. It's my prayer that this time shared here today will have purpose and deep meaning, and that it will honor well Lydia's memory, who passed away on Tuesday, corresponding to the 14th of Av in 5783 on the Jewish calendar. I'm Rabbi Nathan Weiner. I'm a rabbi here locally in South Jersey. It's an honor, truly, on behalf of myself, my family, and the Jewish people, to be present here with you today. And we note that this chapel is full of the love and support of those of you who made time to be present today. But we note also that there are many others who are joining us virtually. Hello and welcome to those watching on the stream. I want to take particular note of Lydia's niece Maria, who's streaming from Russia, and I heard that there are people streaming from all over the world. So again, welcome to all of you. Please know that the family feels your presence. They expressed to me yesterday their appreciation of your presence, and your presence is felt here. So more formally, we gather today to celebrate the life of Lydia Kuznetsov, Lydia bat Alexander, Zichrona Livracha, of blessed memory. Lydia is predeceased by her parents, Alexander and Zoya, both of blessed memory. She's survived by her loving husband, Sergei, whom I learned she met at 14 years old and would have been married to for 50 years this coming October. And her children, her son Artem and his wife Yana, who is missed dearly here today, and Katya and her husband John, and their daughter Zoe, Lydia's granddaughter, and one more, God willing, on the way. May your love and support for one another, God willing, carry you through this difficult loss and transition. So today we have 2 mitzvot, 2 commandments that we're going to be performing. The first is the mitzvah of kavod hamet, of honoring the deceased. And for most of our time together today, that's what we're going to do. We keep our intention, our kavanah, on Lydia's memory. Closer to the conclusion of our time together, we'll transition to supporting the mourners, performing the mitzvah of nichum avelim, comforting the mourners, as they prepare to recite for the first time in Lydia's memory the mourner's Kaddish. I'm now going to recite Psalm 23, a psalm universal across the Abrahamic faith traditions at moments of loss and grief. I'll read it first in the Hebrew, followed by a standard translation in the English. If you'd like to, in either language, you're welcome to say it with me. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai ro'i lo achsar, bin odeshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yinahaleni, nafshi yeshovev yancheni b'magle tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech b'getz al mavet lo irara ki atay madi, shiftecha u'mishantecha hema yenachamuni, Ta'aroch lafanai shulchan neged zorai, tishanta v'shemen roshi kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. Amen. From Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, chapter 3. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot that which has been planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather them up, a time to embrace and a time to refrain, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time for silence and a time for speaking. This is now a time for speaking, and we'll hear from some members of the family. And first I invite up Lydia's children, Katya, who'll be sharing some words accompanied by Artem.
Thank you, Rabbi Nathan. Thank you to all of you, friends, family, and loved ones, for being here to commemorate Lydia. If Lydia had her way, we wouldn't be sitting here. And she certainly wouldn't be lying there. And we would all be on a very, very long walk together, like 40,000 steps long. For those of you who had the good fortune to go on a walk with my mom, I bet you could find the exact date in your pedometer apps by sorting to your highest step count. You would walk with her and she would listen to you, to each and every one of you. She would make you feel like there was no one else on this earth deserving of her full and undivided attention other than you. She would hear you, really hear you. She would be there with you. And you would talk about everything and anything and nothing all at once. She would point out all the little things you might have missed. The crispness of the air, how much greener the grass is today than last week, a random waterfall. She was always looking for the gems and moving squarely towards them without a map to guide her. It was impossible to not get caught up in her wonderment of the small magic that everyday life provides us. And of course, if you've ever joined my mom for a vacation in Europe, you know that it means going into every single church, climbing every single tower, not missing a single winery, and somehow stumbling across tickets to a concerto that same evening. My husband, John, not so silently, grumbles about my love of mountain goating on vacation, and well, Jack, whether by nature or nurture, I come by it honestly. Her curiosity and wanderlust were endless. She rarely subscribed to a lazy day at home. She had to go, do, see, and experience. Walking, riding bikes, hiking, playing tennis, kayaking, skiing, swimming. So many memories I have of my mom are in motion. My mom was fun and easygoing. She loved dancing, a good drink, a delicious meal, entertaining friends and going to the theater or concert. She had a fantastic sense of humor and an absolutely infectious laugh, a giggle. She knew how to write the most clever and personalized poems. She was a phenomenal storyteller. She was incredibly well-read in every genre and could recite plots of novels in colorful detail. When we would go on road trips, she was our personal book on tape before there was a concept of those. For all of her adventuring and spontaneity, she was also a creature of habit and routine. She was a morning person. Her breakfast for 30-plus years that we lived in America was almost always cornflakes, no milk, and a small cup of coffee. And when she was visiting her beloved Paris, then it was a non-negotiable espresso and a plain croissant. She had some funny eccentricities. She was intimidated by large dishware and large portions. She always chose the tiniest coffee cups, glassware, dishes, spoons, and drank comically small amounts of water each day. She would pack about 3 weeks of clothes into one duffel bag, and her favorite snack was pickles. She was a hell of a cook. Never a recipe book in sight, a pinch of this, a bit of that, about 2 cups of the other thing, and you had the world's greatest côtelettes, crepes, sirniki, ratatouille, olivier, vinaigrette, and her signature mushrooms that so many of you in this room have asked, what is in that? And it was always vegeta, guys. Like, you can get it on Amazon. I'll tell you about it later. She loved her work. She was a computer programmer for her entire 50-year career. She believed in doing things diligently, accurately, and without wasting anyone's time, least of all hers. Even in her last visit to the hospital, when it was discovered that her cancer had spread to her brain, she was still on her laptop making sure her team had everything they needed from her for a smooth transition. My mom is often described as strong, tough, stoic, resilient, formidable, and my goodness, was she ever. In general, my mother was a doer and not a talker. She was always true to her word and never displayed an ounce of hypocrisy. In fact, her last words before she slipped into an unresponsive coma were to me. She told me that she had 2 weeks left of life. She defied all of the nurses' expectations for when she would pass, but her word was her bond in life as it was in death. She left this world exactly 2 weeks later. She detested boasting and complaining in equal measure. She hated grand gestures, yet her very quiet doing amounted to grand things. She grew up in Soviet Russia in a communal apartment, and for those of us joining here today that don't know what that is, it is sharing one kitchen and one bathroom with about 3 to 6 other families, BYOB, the toilet paper. She graduated with distinction from the elite and specialized Leningrad High School for Physics and Mathematics, where she met my dad, her soulmate, at 14, and went on to get a master's in applied mathematics from the Institute of Electrotechnical Studies. She was still finishing her master's courses when she got married at 21 and had my brother at 22, and I came along when she was 30. She stood in multi-hour-long lines for bread, potatoes, and sugar to feed our family. She worked full-time and took care of us, often solo, while my dad was on months-long expeditions working as a geophysicist. As the Iron Curtain was being lifted in 1990, my dad leapt at the opportunity to go to America on a learning exchange, which would have potentially allowed him to make a career pivot in Russia's new frontier. He was here in the US for a year before we were able to come over and visit him. When the chance finally presented itself, my mom packed one suitcase, a box of books for my dad, and my 16-year-old brother insisted on taking his guitar. I was 7. She had $100 in cash and said goodbye to her parents. By the time we arrived in the US, the political situation in Russia was devolving. My parents applied for political asylum when we were lucky enough to stay in America, at least temporarily at that point. It was not easy. We had no money. My dad was making $2 an hour. None of us spoke English. And my 16-year-old brother and my mom immediately found odd jobs to support us. My brother was doing landscaping and construction, and my mom, along with her fancy master's degree, found a job making pasta at a local deli. We survived on heavily discounted dented cans, ramen noodles, and aid from the JCC for many months. When the paperwork finally went through, my mom started applying for jobs and pretty much immediately, despite her lack of English, was hired by Raytheon as a programming analyst. In short order, she proved herself to be so valuable that Raytheon hired immigration attorneys and expedited our family's naturalization process. By 1993, just 2 years after we moved, my parents bought the house where my mom took her last breath. She and my dad built it all on their own backs. She never complained. She never boasted. She always knew that America owed her nothing, but gave her everything she needed to make her own way. These events all seem Herculean, but she would be the first to tell you that her absolute greatest pride and joy in her life was her family. She was a devoted daughter and sister. She cherished, honored, and nursed her parents and sister up through their individual ends of their lives, all through their own incredibly challenging circumstances. Though it was being a mom, and much later than she would have imagined, a grandmother, that she considered to be her crowning achievement. And she was the best mom. She was our best friend in the entire world. She was our greatest advisor. There was nothing in the world she wouldn't do for us. She often moved literal mountains for us and never asked for a single second of glory. My brother and I would each call her 5 times a day, and she never declined a single call. And with how much bandwidth she gave to each one of us in her work, it's amazing she had any time for any of you. But that was her genuine superpower. So many of you in these last weeks and days have reached out and said she was your second mom too, that she always had time for you. Even on hospice, even when she was severely deteriorating towards her final breaths, she was constantly worrying about all of us and how we were doing. She was suffering so much, but she was never ready to let go of being a mom. My daughter Zoe, Lydia's mother's namesake, was the apple of her eye, and she fought against all hope to meet her grandson. Unfortunately, she was roughly 8 weeks shy of giving him the kiss she so wanted to. But she will always be with us, and he will grow up to know her incredible spirit. This baby is due October 6th, which would have also been my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. And that brings me to her great love, my dad, Sergey. They met when they were 14 and did this life together. Even though she picked on you constantly, a love language that no one will ever understand, she loved you so much, Papa. She was in love with your heart of gold, and you with hers. She always told us that you were the absolute best dad and best person to raise children with. And so and I wholeheartedly agree. You were her favorite person to adventure with and her greatest source of comfort until the very end. Mommy, thank you for everything. Thank you for giving us your greatest gifts, which were your remarkable values. Even though you are no longer physically with us, we will always continue to feel your resilience, strength, and endurance, lifting up our family and lifting up everyone physically in this room and streaming room. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. I'll end this with a classic poem. I Carry You, Your Heart With Me by E.E. Cummings. I carry your heart with me. I carry it in my heart. I am never without it. Anywhere I go, you go, my dear. And whatever is done by only me is your doing, my darling. I fear no fate, for you are my fate, my sweet. I want no world, for beautiful you are my world, my true. And it's you are whatever a moon has always meant, and whatever a sun will always sing is you. Here's the deepest secret nobody knows. Here's the root of the root, and the bud of the bud. and the sky of a tree called life, which grows higher than soul can hope or mind can hide. And this is the wonder that keeps the stars apart. I carry your heart. I carry it in my heart. Thank you.
It's okay.
After this exhaustive Wikipedia page, very difficult to add something else. So I will do some brush strokes in impressionist manner. Common knowledge, if you want to learn something about country, talk to taxi driver. Here, not many taxi drivers. We're driving our own cars. So, second guess is hairdresser. So, Lydia's hairdresser sent me a message yesterday. You are due for trim. Came today. Told her. She was saying, moment. She came in, start to talk, start to communicate with her. She would say that she is the best client. Not judgmental and assuming. It was just pleasure to be with her. Working for her. I Темочки не надо, ясно, хорошо. You learn that we were sweethearts from the high school, and I was appreciating your heart, her warmth, of her soul, and that was very dear to me. On the other hand, she was fun-loving. She had the shortest skirt among among girls, but actually it wasn't bad, you know. I actually appreciated this in my heart. I was more like a closed person, grew up pretty much alone. My dad was merchant marine, and he was always on the route, and my mom worked many jobs, so I used to be more alone, and communication was difficult for me. And Lydia was kind of window into the world for me. So So after high school, we parted. She went to electrotechnical university, and I went to Leningrad University into physics. But then, 4 years later, we were like attracted. It's like two particles, together, and sparks start to fly. I proposed her, and lo and behold, here is my son. So we were young. We just, was finishing our masters. We did it good, and Toma brought so much joy to our family. We lived with Lydia's parents in the beginning, and then had our own small apartment. But we were happy. It was cramped, but it was a nice life there. We wasn't. It was art of enjoying family, raising family with small means. So Lydia was a very well-educated person. She grew up in a loving family, and these guys went through World War, evacuation. Lydia's dad fought in the hardest battles. He was on Kurskaya Duga. 10% of soldiers of their regiments would survive. Luckily, he came back unharmed. And his dad suffered from Bolsheviks. He was a freelancer, a journalist. He was deep in cultural life of St. Petersburg. Knew a lot of artists, writers, but that's theory of class war, called to kill these people. Nevertheless, it is sparks of culture, of this great Russian culture, which brought here Tchaikovsky. Zvarykin. Yeah, that's people who left Russia and brought a lot of contribution here in the United States and for whole humanity. She was very good in literature. She raised, kids, best examples. Yeah, it was unbelievable moments when we would go back from Canada after skiing, and she would recite Master and Margarita just performance. And time was flying. She was in her early student time a rock and roller. And again, like in communist Russia, rock and roll was verboten. So, but she would go on underground concerts and, living the life, finding some fun, there also. And when we start to date each other, I found that she can cook. Okay, so I could, because I would go for treks into the wilderness, and I used to cook in the forests. So she loved my cooking, and it was good. When Toma was born, she was looking at him like a treasure, and she wouldn't put together, how to wrap him into the linens, and that was my first, assignment. I was doing this kid, taking care. Then she lost her milk. Okay, I was feeding my son with, this artificial milk. So we were splitting our chores like 50-50. And then, some womanhood took over, and she started to cook and develop her own cuisine, and she became mainstay of our family, where I was venturing into some expeditions. And then suddenly she was saying, here is one more good one. When she was pregnant with Artem, we didn't know, we didn't have this diagnostics, but she wanted a son, and she delivered a son. And then she came to me and asked, listen, I want a girl. Listen, I never did many kids. I don't know what the odds are. I'll try. And she delivered Katya. Yeah, it was very funny. And with kids, we always try to be active. Sports was our main trait, and she was extremely competitive. Right, and in table tennis, she used to kick my ass all the time. She had beautiful, forehand, flat, and ball was zipping by, it was very hard to get there. But there is a saying that, opposites, like meets in the middle. That maybe that's what it is, and definitely she brought to me so much values, like family values, kids. It is precious. On the other hand, I need to say very warm words about Americans. I came as a soccer coach here, like for a couple months, I was spending a lot of time with my son and kids playing soccer, and came as a youth soccer teacher. And just a second, I lived among host families and doing cultural work in West Virginia University. But I wanted to start my own engineering company, and I was interested in connections in engineering, and the program helped me to move to Philadelphia and placed me into a small company, controlled access, and to which Ada Excellent came for interview. And my vice president called me, to talk to her. And from that time, we're good friends. And Ada gave recommendational letter, which opened the door to get apartment. And from that time, I was able to throw an anchor here, and company gave me to use a truck, and Tjoma and I, like in a day, when we got apartment, drove around through the friends and brought silverware and plates and furniture. And my wife was cleaning the silverware and crying. So it came out of nowhere. And I just amazed how good people are here, helping each other. Yeah, so without you guys, we wouldn't be able to strike here. Yeah, Lydia was absolutely stoic at the last days, and that helped us a lot, because cancer was, we didn't know what's going on. She was in such pain. But then when we learned and started treatment, it was too late, but at least she didn't have pain and passed away in peace. Nurses who professionally working with such people, saying that we're amazed, how strong she is, how she is conducting herself. So that's my wife. Thank you.
It's with all these thoughts and memories in mind that we move to the central prayer of a Jewish memorial service, El Malei Rachamim, that asks God to grant our loved ones perfect rest on the wings of God's divine presence. I'll read it first in the English, followed by a chanting in the Hebrew. If you're physically able, I invite you to please rise. O God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant true rest upon the wings of the divine presence in the exalted spheres of the holy and pure, who shine as a resplendence of the firmament, to the soul of Lydia Kuznetsov, who has gone to her eternal home. For charity has been donated in remembrance of her soul. May her place of rest be in the Garden of Eden. Therefore, may the All-Merciful One shelter her with the cover of God's wings forever, and bind her soul in the bond of life. Adonai is her heritage. May she rest in her resting place in peace, and let us say, Amen. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, B'ma'alot Kedoshim U'Tehorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Lydia Bat Alexander, Shehalcha Le'olama. Ba'avor Shenadvu Tzadaka Ba'ad Hazkarat Nishmata, Began Eden Tehe Menuchata, Lachen Bal Harachamim Yastireha B'Setor Kenafav Le'olamim. V'yitzror B'yitzror HaChayim Et Nishmata, Adonai hu nachalata, v'tanuach al mishkava b'shalom, v'nomar, Amen. Ask you to please remain standing as we shift at this point from the mitzvah, as I explained earlier, the mitzvah of kavod hamet, of honoring the deceased, to nichum avelim, of comforting the mourners. As each of you, by your presence, form a community of consolation around them. We're going to say the mourner's Kaddish, which doesn't speak of death at all. It's a prayer we say that says praise words. It begins, Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, may God's great name be made greater and more holy. And the idea here is that when you go and do a mitzvah in the world, you get the credit. Except, it was Lydia's passing that prompted the performance of this mitzvah of declaring God's name great. Therefore, she gets the credit. So, in a way, the goodness that you heard from the family, the goodness that you know in your heart to be true, the way that she, in life, made the world a better place, continues through you, through doing mitzvot on her behalf as she remains bound in the bond of life. So I believe your books are open to the pages. If you're comfortable, please recite it with me. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, bi'alma divara kirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei t'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv imru amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mivarach Le'olam Ulamei Omaya. Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh. v'yitadar, v'yitalev, v'yitalal, shemei dekudesha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechamata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. May the one who ordains peace in the heavens inspire us to be God's partners and agents for peace on earth, for us, for all Israel and all inhabitants of the earth, and we say, amen. Please be seated. Our formal time together here at the chapel is drawing to a close. The family asks for a few brief announcements. First, donations in lieu of flowers may be made in Lydia's memory in honor to the Breast Cancer Alliance. And then guests, family, and friends are all welcome immediately following our time at the chapel here back to the family residence at 6 Hartley Lane, Hartley, 6 Hartley Lane in Voorhees.